back. It is your feel-good breakfast show. It's Expresso on S3. Tuesdays are a busy day. We focus on health. We focus on fashion. Today, we're also focusing on relationships, and we have a bit of a dilemma, and I'm going to share that with you.
Okay.
So here is our dilemma. This lady wrote saying, my now fiance is the type of guy to go overboard and cross the line with being fun and spontaneous, especially when he's intoxicated. Now, he was recently out with his friends to celebrate our engagement, and I just found out by a girl messaging me on social media that he slept with her on a night out when they were both intoxicated. I'm extremely hurt by this. Do I confront him for the truth, or do I just pack my things and leave the engagement? What do I do?
Well, I know we are all reaching for answers right now, and all of our bias is jumping on board this little ship, so we're going to need the professionals, I think, to step in and here to give us their professional advice. It's Danielle Meyer. She is an HPCSA registered mental health counsellor and a good friend on the show. And then Obisa Ngalo, a social worker and office manager from the incredible FAMSA. That's Family South Africa Western Cape, who do incredible work where it matters most. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Can of worms.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to prefix this because I've been through a similar situation, albeit not with the well, maybe there was the intoxication element, but the infidelity, the being cheated on. And sadly, it was a line in the sand that I could not come back from. And it's defined how I've had every relationship after that in terms of the boundaries I set.
Yeah.
Going into a relationship, is there a way you can preload through setting your boundaries, through talking about the kind of person that you are, surely getting to the point of an engagement, you understand each other's nature, and you're having those honest conversations about what the danger areas are, what I'm good at, where I need you to help, those sorts of things. Does this conversation come into that boundary setting conversation and that initial connection? Danielle, how are you feeling about this scenario?
No, definitely. I think there's such an importance around boundary setting, especially, when it comes to a situation like
Albeit
this.
you wouldn't think that you would have to tell your partner sleeping with other people is a no-no, but hence maybe it is.
And that's why it's such an important conversation to venture into within a relationship. And so the benefits of boundaries is that it actually creates a safe space and also helps to create that sense of accountability between yourself and your partner. And it helps to build that sense of trust and transparency and communicating what it is that you actually, need and expect within the relationship.
I.e. when the buzz kicks in, get in a taxi and go home, like that kind of thing. And when we say boundaries, it's not expecting the other person to be under your control, or it's more knowing what you're like, being honest about that so you can have an action plan.
Definitely.
Yes.
Kobisa, I'm maybe going to ask you this.
Yeah.
I feel like in situations like this, it's so easy to blame the alcohol, but there is a lot of your own behavior that's perhaps amplified or enhanced through alcohol.
True.
What would you recommend for the person in this scenario when it comes to, the intoxication and the mistrust that now comes from that? Is it something that clearly it needs to be addressed, but how does she start to do that?
All right. So obviously that needs to be addressed, but not when there's intoxication.
Yeah.
So you have to wait until
Not
this
in the
person
peak,
is in sober minds, and then you can start having the communication about it, right? And so that we can be both in good terms of what is expected of us, what are the limits when it comes to alcohol. Because we cannot say people mustn't drink. However, there's a way of drinking. And as a couple, you have to decide on what are the limits when it comes to alcohol.
Know thine enemy.
Yes. Yes.
Definitely.
So I would say that it's very important to address it, but obviously when people are sober, because alcohol has got this way of distorting the judgment. You don't make good decisions when you're under the influence of alcohol.
You never make good decisions.
Yes.
Well, hoping that you are not on that train right now. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to weigh in, if you have any questions or possibly a personal perspective, head over to our socials. Use our WhatsApp line. We'll keep that number up throughout the conversation. You can be anonymous if you want. This is a safe place, but it's an opportunity to maybe step outside of the drama that's going on. Because I think far too often when these things hit, all of your baggage kicks in. And all of us have something. And this will be a massive, massive trigger. In your heart of hearts, professionally, when you look at the baseline of your success stories when working with couples in particular, Do we focus on the alcohol and addressing that as being one of the elements that exacerbates this? Do we focus on the relationship first? Do we get practical and look for like a quick bandage to put on, i.e. just take the alcohol out of the equation?
Yeah.
Or do we need to take a deeper, more long-term kind of view on understanding each other? How do you approach this particular battle, do you think?
I think it's such a layered story and kind of multifaceted when it comes to this kind of dilemma and stresses. But, you know, before anything else, we are individuals before we are part of something else. And so it's kind of addressing, look, what are things that I struggle with? What are maybe some unhealthy habits that I'm struggling with? What is my partner struggling with? Let's have that conversation and kind of understanding that. And then also understanding, you know, learning about substance abuse, if that's something that's, you know, now entered into the relationship as a stressor within the relationship, and kind of navigating and working your way through it.
Get the tools, but that speaks to a collaborative effort to move forward as opposed to one trying to dominate or force or push. Or,
Yeah.
Well, she mentioned they're engaged, they're at the start of their engagement, which naturally would lead to the start of your marriage.
Sure.
What are the ramifications if she does not address this now in her relationship?
Sure. Obviously, this relationship, there's no base. There's no, it's going to affect them in the long run of this relationship. So it's very important to address these while you are getting into it before the relationship goes into the next stages. So it can get the relationship to be very intoxicated and not a safe space for you to be in, because you know there are issues that were never addressed, or there are issues that you never got to understand about this person that you are staying with or that you are about to stay with. So it's very important to talk about these things before you get into the marriage.
The foundation, because you will work on it. That's the joy of being married, is you actually get practical about working on yourself, working together to improve yourselves. And it can be hectic and it can get quite ugly because you're addressing your childhood trauma, all of those things. So you need to be clear. And maybe that's the first step towards building trust again, because you can't force another person to be trustworthy. You can just offer them an example or you can show. So how does that trust conversation begin? And let's maybe take it to the person who's transgressed here. How do they go about proving to their partner that they can be trusted in those situations once that line has been crossed?
Yeah, so
Is it possible?
So it is possible, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Time.
So time, work. When it comes to infidelity, unfortunately, the trust has been broken. And so now we're moving from that place of anxiousness and kind of fear-based. So that partner that, you know, he's hurt her in this particular scenario, he now needs to adhere to those behavioral changes that he's promising he's going to make.
Don't tell, you show. Right?
Yeah, you show. Change behavior is, I believe change behavior is kind of the best apology and kind of correct what it is.
Pretty much the only apology that really
in
works.
this situation,
yeah, for sure.
definitely, and kind of have that open communication as you're trying to rebuild that trust within the relationship.
And that's going to take a lot of work. Well, ladies, don't go anywhere. We still have so much to unpack with this. Please share your thoughts with us. Perhaps you want to stay anonymous. You want to be part of this conversation. Voice note us on 063 408 8863. We'll be right back after the break.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to our Relationship Tuesday. Oh, and we're chewing on some gristle this morning. We get into those relationship dilemmas, and this morning's reads like this. My now fiance is the type of guy to go overboard and cross the line with being fun and spontaneous, especially when he's intoxicated. And he was recently out with his friends to celebrate our engagement, and I just found out by a girl messaging me on social media that he slept with her on a night out, and they were both obviously heavily intoxicated. I'm extremely hurt by this. Do I confront him for the truth, or do I just pack my things up and leave the engagement? What do I do? And with the unenviable task of answering that question, we brought in the pros. We've got HPCSA registered mental health counsellor Danielle Meyer and Obisa Ngalo, a social worker and office manager from the incredible FAMSA. And we want to get into a couple of comments. And again, we have to kind of prefix this whole thing that this is probably the most triggering relationship conversation that you could have. So take these comments with a pinch of salt, but let's see what you guys are saying online.
Okay, Bianca came through and said, that happened to me.
Oh.
I still married him, didn't trust him. Every time he walked out the door or on his phone, I didn't trust him. It took me 4 years to walk away because the cheating didn't stop. Please do not waste your time. Find a guy who loves God, who loves himself and knows his role as a man. If he loves God, he will know how to love you. Too many broken men in the world not getting help. You can walk away. Bianca, thank you for sharing that. I can imagine it, like we said, this is triggering. She went through with the marriage and eventually realized that this behavior did not stop. Getting married doesn't necessarily mean that person's behavior is going to stop.
Yeah.
Is there a fail-safe in this sense? And I say this on behalf of the person who was so madly in love with this person who has sold them out in this way, that we can find our way back. And I ask this again with a different angle, because I have friends whose relationships could not be stronger, and both of them have had issues on either side of that over a relationship that has spanned most of their life. They are so much better for it because they've gotten over the notion that they own each other, that their happiness is the other person's responsibility. They have let go of so much of what we feel is a relationship when we're trying to feed off our partner in that sense. Is there a way that this can be turned into that positive moment of let's get real, be honest about who we are, take accountability and move forward? I say that with great hope, but even as the words come out my mouth, I don't believe it's possible.
Yeah.
Danielle, is there a way back?
Look, like you said, it takes accountability. It takes accountability actually acknowledging what's going on. And you need to have those conversations with your partner about, you know, commitment clarity if need be. What does this commitment need to you, and how far are you willing to actually invest and work through some of those stresses and issues? But I mean, you know, as that comment said, she mentioned that I actually didn't trust him. Every time he walked out the door, I was struggling to trust him. And she mentioned there's so many broken men out there. But also, it starts with your self-worth and your self-value. And how you actually see yourself, because that's also going to shape.
If you're willing to accept that or not for yourself.
And it shapes your decision-making in the relationship as well. So I think that plays into it.
It definitely plays into it. We actually received a voice note, so let's take a listen to this one. I believe it's anonymous. Good morning.
Goeiemôre. Ek was in dieselfde situasie meer as 40 jaar terug. En ek was in 'n verhouding met my man op daardie stadium. En hy was baie lieve girl, soos hulle sê, en ook rondgeslaap. En toe ek swanger geraak en voor ons getrou het ons dit uitgepraat en ek het my boundaries geset. I set my own boundaries. And we were married for 40 years before he died in 2019. So it's all about communication, respect, trust. Yeah, there will be trust issues all the time, but if you make the decision to stay in that relationship and work hard towards it and don't listen to friends and family and stuff, it can work. Thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
anonymous.
there's your proof. 40 years worth of proof. I'd love to have her here to ask her a few questions to kind of qualify what she's saying here. But that's got to fill you with hope that you can achieve it. But it speaks to what sounds like 40 years of working at it. And that's a relationship is not something that you're given. It's something that you strive for and work towards, yes?
Yes, that's true. So you have to put an effort to make it work. And it requires the two of you.
Yeah.
So if you make a decision of staying in that relationship, then you have to be in for working hard for that. And especially the person that has done the cheating, you have to earn your trust by the actions that you are doing. So like she's saying that I don't trust him when he's on his phone, then I have to be transparent about what am I doing in the phone.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest about my every move in this relationship.
That's the trade. Unfortunately, that's the trade-off. Yeah.
So where would, in our dilemma that we presented, where do they now need to start?
Well, I think, sure, it's such a tricky one because, you know, everyone has different opinions and feelings. But I think with this one specifically, you know, what I liked about the voice note is that she empowered herself
Yeah,
in that
she didn't wait
situation.
for something to
she
happen,
didn't
yeah.
wait. She said, I set my boundaries. I invested in my mental health and how I'm actually going to put that line or those lines in place. And actually, she did hold him accountable to those behavioral changes. So I think for this situation, she needs to invest in her mental health, put herself first and empower herself in the situation and say, listen, this is what I need if I'm going to move forward.
Yeah.
But before even all of that, you know, prioritize her mental health first, because she is hurting right now. And I'm sure it feels like it just happened the other day. So
Yes.
she's still working through
And
that.
the problem is you relive it every time you have an intimate moment or you engage with your partner in that sense. That's the joy of this kind of baggage in a relationship. Well, I am feeling, admittedly, just a tiny bit more hopeful than when we began this conversation for all those out there, and there are many. I think maybe a first practical step, and you can take the emotional edge off by focusing on things like the alcohol, all those mitigating circumstances that often are the tipping point in these situations as that first step. But I would suggest very strongly that you hold the mirror up first. Do that deep dive, as our incredible women have said today. Take a look at yourself and what you need, what your boundaries are. The answer might be sitting right there before you've even engaged with your partner. But just make sure you don't get swept up in the emotion of it. Just try to think clearly about what you deserve, what you're worth, and what you need. And good luck, because it is a tricky one.
It is.